Okay, welcome back. We're on part two of this lecture, Concept and Process for Designers, and I just spent like 9 minutes in basically a preamble in the preface to this lecture. So let's hope I pick up the pace a little bit and we can get this done in just two more parts. So just want to quickly say, normally this lecture comes in after after I give the process lecture and the concept lecture, and then I follow this up where I kind of talk about how specifically these ideas about concept and process will relate also to designers. But after, in consultation with Professor Dickey, we were talking, and we both decided that right now the need of the class is the anxiety that some of the graphic design students are feeling about how they fit in to this idea of the purpose of this class. And so we decided I would do this one first. But you certainly should go and watch the other ones, and um, you might want to watch them first, depending on if they're all uploaded. So here we are going to be talking about a number of different things, and I have a kind of a basic outline of all the different things we're going to be discussing. And so we're going to be talking about sketchbooks and process books, and then we're going to be talking about kind of design processes, and and then that's going to lead us eventually to be talking about systems art and how certain things that graphic designers do are related to that, and then lastly to things like concept art and concept products. Okay, so first of all, we're just going to look at some graphic designers who post images about their process books, and I've doing work looking about process books. I found this particular graphic designer, Claire Coulomb, who posts pretty regularly, and I really think she keeps a very interesting, very exciting set of books. Was there a page I missed? I guess not. Um, and so I think you can really kind of see this is almost like a classic way that designers use their process book for development of ideas. Oh yeah, here's the other page. I knew I was missing a page. Um, but also there are some other graphic designers I came across who, in their process books, used them in a much more open-ended way rather than specifically focused just to the assignment, just to the client. This is the job I'm working on. They also use their process books as just a place for them to collect their ideas and to be very open process, whether it's in a very kind of concept open process, just like letting their brain in a narrative and content way meander around, or in a very kind of non-objective or abstract sense of so just kind of playing with mark making systems and colors. But I think that, and both of them, from what I read from both their blogs, both of them see this type of approach as being integral to what they're trying to do as designers, and that um, they are resources for them. They're part of a practice of just keeping themselves loose and just always looking for exploration and learning, but also as a source that, like Pritchard talked about, how these are plays on, on design concepts, like just design organizations, play on palettes, and so they are source materials for him in terms of just thinking about the spatial relationships between marks and stuff like that. Um, but there are other types of process books, both in terms of things that are used in class, but also sometimes professionally. Sometimes designers will make process books that are um, not more formal, right? And they are printed books, and they become kind of a record of things like their influences and the things they're looking at, but also a record of their artwork and a record of how their ideas develop. So kind of a record of their process, but also a record of their portfolio, but also a record of all the ideas and influences that go into all of that process. Um, and so from this page, you can see those type of ideas, or on Hope Finley's page. And so one of the things about the way graphic designers think about process that's a little bit different from the way studio people might think about process is that a graphic designer tends to think about process project by project. They may not usually think about the process of all the projects, right, relating to a thing. Um, but so per project, they may think about exploration and then refinement. They may think about giving themselves lots of options and then editing and choosing and selecting the best ones and then finding synthesis and then finding refinement. Um, but it tends to be all in focused in on what the client wants, what the job is, what the assignment is of that particular project. So I have an example here of the redesign for the New York Public Library, all based on the original one, which is this one here, and this was the original photo that this original logo mark was based off of, and then here are all the different versions until they come to the final one. And so, and another thing that's kind of interesting to me is that as the more I researched this, the more I found out that like this idea of designers focusing on what their idea process is and then coming up with some sort of graphic representation of that is a pretty common assignment, especially in graduate school, where it's like kind of an early graduate school kind of process where, or assignment, where a young designer is challenged to come up with kind of an iconographic a graphic that represents the information of like, this is how I work out my ideas. And I think that part of the reason for this assignment is that it allows the students to both have a dialogue about their designs, but also a dialogue about their differences between the way they approach problems, and talk about that. And interestingly enough, I noticed, and that this particular poster showed up a lot in a lot of my image searches. I found it on numerous different websites for lots of different companies, like actual companies that are making money using this as a representation of their design process. After all, it says right up there, our design process, but none of them seem to actually own it, and none of them ever attribute it. So there you go, rampant theft on the internet. What a shock. Here's another example of a company where they posted kind of a design grid and then the design process that led to this final logo design. So another way to think about design. So a lot of what we looked at in this last part, like this kind of and this, right, is, or the Claire Coulon process books right at the beginning, they're all relatively like normal to what you would expect the way designers think about process. But there are exceptions to this rules about the way designers think about process. And when I was thinking about who do I know, what artist do I know who's technically a designer, who has a very kind of open-ended, very loose type of idea development and process, I thought of Frank Gehry, who's an architect. This particular building that we're looking at is a mental health hospital. I believe it's in Minneapolis. Whenever I show this image in my art appreciation class, they always think it's really funny that this is a hospital for mental health, like that somehow that's like really mean to make a building so weird and wacky for someone who might be having difficulty trusting their own mind. I don't know how much but I've noticed many people find that to be funny. But I think it's an amazing building. But what I want to talk about is not so much the building. Do apologize for the dogs. What I want to talk about is his process. Frank Gehry starts in a very loose kind of way. They're going to quiet down any second, I'm sure. In a very loose way, where a lot of how he develops his work is just playing him and a couple of his key designers, just crumpling up paper, twisting paper, taping paper together, and just coming up with different ideas of shapes and forms without any idea of how it's going to actually be a building, right? Without any project in mind, just looking and saying, what do you think of this shape? All right, we're getting into the end of this lecture, and then simply following that up with these very loose drawings. I will talk about Frank Gehry a little bit more in part 3, but I think we can do this, we can finish it in part 3.